We are here today at your first oversight hearing 9 months into your tenure, at a time when hundreds of career prosecutors have quit because they were required to take unethical actions at odds with that promise, or feared that they would have to take such actions if they remained on the job. When over 1,000 former federal prosecutors have sounded the alarm about the unprecedented degree to which the powers of DOJ are being abused to go after the president's enemies. I approach this hearing with a heavy heart. As a former federal prosecutor myself, I served in a department that, whether it was under a Democratic or Republican president, would never use the office to go after the president's enemies or to hide the corruption of his friends. But today, the Justice Department has been used to cover up the possible corruption of the mayor of New York or of a high-level administration official taking $50,000 reportedly in cash in a bag, or a child sex predator who befriended the president and some of his cabinet members. And instead of preventing partisan weaponization, your department has engaged in a brazenly political prosecution at the president's explicit direction. The department has become President Trump's personal sword and shield to go after his ever-growing list of political enemies and to protect himself, his allies, and associates. My questions therefore focus on these two themes: hiding the corrupt acts of his friends and prioritizing the political prosecution of his enemies. So let me start with the shocking allegations of bribery and pay to play. 2 weeks ago, 4 major media outlets reported that Tom Homan, the president's top deportation official working in the White House, took $50,000 in cash in a bag from undercover FBI agents in September 2024, just over a year ago. According to these reports, Homan indicated he would facilitate securing contracts in exchange for money once he was in office in a future Trump administration. Reportedly, this exchange was caught on tape. Rather than pursue this investigation without fear or favor, the department and the FBI under your leadership or that of your predecessor before you confirmed quietly shut it down. Once news broke, your deputy and FBI director issued a joint public statement confirming that the Trump administration closed the investigation. White House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt denied Homan took the $50,000, telling a reporter, quote, "Mr. Homan never took the $50,000 that you're referring to, so you should get your facts straight." So today I hope you can help us get our facts straight. Was that true, what the White House Press Secretary said when she denied Homan took the money? Did he take the money?
Senator Schiff, as I stated earlier, I was not in office. I was not confirmed when that was handled.
So does that mean...
Deputy Attorney General Blanche and Director Patel said that there was no evidence that Tom Homan committed a crime. Yet now you're putting his picture up to slander him.
No, I'm putting his picture up showing an interview he gave with, I think, Fox, in which he was asked explicitly about these allegations that he took a $50,000 bribe, and he refused to answer. He said he didn't answer the question whether he took the money, so I'm asking you the question. Did he take the money?
Senator Schiff, I answered that question multiple times, and frankly,
Well, I don't think, with respect, I don't think you did. But in case I just didn't hear you, what is the answer? Did he take the money?
Senator Schiff, that happened prior to my confirmation as Attorney General. I said that.
Do you know, sitting here, whether he took the money?
All I know is that Deputy Attorney General Todd Blanche and FBI Director Patel said there was no case. And Caroline Leavitt is one of the most trustworthy human beings I know.
So
and
was she,
Senator Schiff,
was she
if
right?
you worked for me, you would have been fired because you were censured by Congress for lying with your
We can stipulate you can stipulate to all your personal attacks on the Democratic members of the committee.
Personal attacks? You've been attacking my FBI director. You've been attacking my office. You've been attacking.
But what we're interested in,
borders are.
What we're interested in is the answer to these oversight questions.
You were asked by my colleague.
You were asked by my colleague.
Attacking good people.
Regular order, Madam Chair, so I can ask a question. You were asked by my colleague from Vermont whether you will support providing a video or audio tape, if it exists, of Mr. Homan taking $50,000 in bribe money from the FBI, Will you support a request by this committee to provide that tape or tapes to the committee? Yes or no?
Senator Schiff, you can talk to Director Patel about that.
Well, I'm talking to you about it. You're the Attorney General. This will be your decision. Will you
You
support?
don't have to tell me what is my decision and
Well,
what is
then-
not
then-
my decision.
then-
I
and
said
you- and
you
you
can
don't
talk
have
to
to-
Director
you
Patel.
don't have to try to-
You think
you
you've
don't
got a
have to-
gotcha with Tom Homan, our
Excuse me,
border czar,
excuse me, you
who's
don't have-
been out there
excuse me.
fighting for our country
Madam
since
Chair,
Donald Trump took office.
I'm trying to ask you a question. Regular order, please. And you don't have to defer to the FBI director to pass the buck. So I'm asking you, will you support a request so that the committee, or indeed I believe the American people, should be able to see that video or audio tape? Will you support that request?
Will you apologize to Donald Trump
So
for
I
trying
guess
to impeach
the answer
him
is you won't support that
after
request.
you now know that
So
Joe
let me-
Biden tried
let
to
me
cover up
do
Hunter
this.
Biden's involvement with
Excuse
Ukraine?
me. Let me do this because I think it's valuable that the American people get a sense of what you've refused to answer today. So these are just some of the questions you refused to answer, or have answered with personal attacks on members of this committee. You were asked whether you consulted with career ethics lawyers, as you promised you would do during your nomination hearing, when you approved the president receiving a $400 million gift from the Qataris. You refused to answer that question. You were asked who or what role you may have played, or who played the role in asking that Trump's name be flagged in any of the Epstein documents gathered by the FBI. You refused to answer that question. You were asked whether Homan kept the $50,000 bribe money. You refused to answer that question. You were asked whether Homan paid taxes on the $50,000 bribe money. You refused to answer that question. You were asked, did career prosecutors find insufficient evidence to charge James Comey? You refused to answer that question. You were asked, how are military strikes on these boats in the Caribbean legal? And you refused to even answer that question.
You were asked, have a law degree,
excuse
Senator
me,
Schiff?
excuse me. You were asked, did you discuss indicting James Comey with the president? You refused to answer that question. You were asked, did you approve the firing of antitrust lawyers who disagreed with the Hewlett-Packard merger? You refused to answer that question. You were asked whether you support a restoration fund for violent insurrections to attack the Capitol on January 6th. You refused to answer that question. You were asked whether you were firing career professionals, career prosecutors, just because they worked on January 6th investigations. You refused to answer that question. You were asked by my California colleague whether you believe government officials, like immigration officials, have to abide by court orders. You wouldn't even answer that question. This is supposed to be an oversight hearing.
Oversight?
Excuse me, you can attack me after my time is over.
You've attacked all of us, including President Trump, for your entire
You can attack me later,
career.
and I know you've got plenty of canned attacks. We've heard them all day to day.
Canned attacks on you?
This is supposed to be...
No one needs a canned attack on you.
Regular order, Madam Chair, I'm trying to speak. This is supposed to be an oversight hearing of the Justice Department. And it comes in the wake of an indictment called for by the president of one of his enemies. This is supposed to be an oversight hearing, and it comes in the wake of revelations that a top administration official took $50,000 in a bag, and this department made that investigation go away. This is supposed to be an oversight hearing when dozens of prosecutors have been fired simply because they worked on cases investigating the former president. This is, and now
What
the current
about the
president.
fires in California?
And
Do you
this
care
is
about that,
supposed to
Senator
be,
Schiff?
this is supposed to be an oversight hearing in which members of Congress can get serious answers to serious questions about the
Are the
cover-up-
riots in
about the
LA
cover-up-
serious?
About the cover-up of corruption, about the prosecution of the president's enemies. And
I think you owe the president an apology
when will it be
your entire
when will
career,
it be that the
frankly.
members of this committee on a bipartisan basis demand answers to those questions and refuse to accept
Clearly you're a
personal,
failed lawyer
refuse
because
to
you
accept,
don't understand when
excuse
someone
me,
can and cannot
refuse
answer
to
a
accept
question.
personal slander as an answer to those questions.
Personal slander.
With
Will
that,
you
Madam Chair,
apologize to Donald
I yield
Trump
back.
for slandering him? Personal slander.
Senator Bribe.
May I ask unanimous consent, Madam Chair, to introduce into the record the statement of 1,000 former Justice Department officials who warned that the Comey indictment is a democracy-threatening abuse of power. May I also request unanimous consent for the introduction into the record of 282 former career officials at the Justice Department raising an alarm who were voluntarily or involuntarily forced to leave the department because of improper actions taken by the Department of Justice. May I introduce, with unanimous consent, the Justice Department manual that talks about when initiating and declining charges are subject to impermissible considerations. And finally, Madam Chair, may I introduce the letter from Michael Ben-Ari, a career counterterrorism prosecutor, DOJ, a letter he nailed to his door, which concludes by urging officials to do the right thing for the right reasons, to follow the facts and the law, and raises the alarm that the decision to remove experienced career officials from U.S. attorneys' offices, the FBI, and critical parts of DOJ undermines our country's abilities to counter terrorist organizations, malign nation-state actors, and countless others that seek to harm our nation and its citizens. And he believes that the priority is prosecuting the president's enemies rather than protecting the country.
1 moment.
May I have unanimous consent to enter these into the record?
Without objection.
Thank you. I yield back.
Senator Britt.
Senator Moody, may I clarify one thing he entered in the record? I just want to say that I believe he entered a letter by 200 and something former employees. Well, I believe the spokesperson for that letter was also the spokesperson for Jack Smith.
Senator Britt. Thank you, Madam Chair. General Bondi.
In politics, there are moments that look like just another exchange between two figures, but are actually much more significant. This particular exchange between Representative Adam Schiff and Pam Bondi is one of those moments. At first glance, it might seem like a typical back and forth, but it quickly becomes clear that it's about more than just politics. It's about the integrity of the justice system itself. Schiff doesn't take the easy route. He doesn't just throw out a clever gotcha. He doesn't aim to grandstand for the cameras. Instead, he connects the dots out loud, exposing something far bigger. The widening gap between the rhetoric from Republicans and the economic and legal reality that has been ignored for far too long. Schiff starts with a pattern, a strategy that's deceptively simple yet profoundly revealing. He doesn't rush to paint the situation with sweeping generalities. Instead, he methodically lays out the sequence of events in clear, accessible language, presenting what so many Americans already feel but don't always have the vocabulary to express. Under Trump, the Justice Department stopped looking like a neutral institution and began resembling something more dangerous, a tool to protect the president's allies and a weapon to attack his enemies. In this particular exchange, Representative Schiff is asking a question that, at its core, isn't partisan, isn't ideological. It's simply an honest inquiry. Can you name one independent economist who believes the GOP budget won't add to the national debt? It's a straightforward question, yet one that puts the Republican fiscal arguments to the test. And here's where Schiff's strategy becomes clear. The question is meant to expose the facade. For years, Republicans have pushed tax cuts for the wealthiest Americans with the promise that they'll pay for themselves through economic growth. But time and again, history has shown the opposite. The Bush tax cuts of 2001 and 2003, the Trump tax cuts, they all exploded the deficit and added to the debt. Now, with the Trump-Bessent plan, the same playbook is being followed, only the stakes are even higher. Interest rates are rising, borrowing is more expensive, and the federal budget is already facing unprecedented pressure. Schiff's question is designed to shine a light on the contradictions of this approach, contradictions that aren't just economic, they're moral. Schiff highlights this hypocrisy with a precision that's impossible to ignore. Bessent built his career in finance where ignoring sound advice from analysts gets you fired. In that world, pretending your numbers work because you want them to would be reckless. But when Bessent assumed a position of public responsibility, he abandoned that level of accountability. Instead of addressing years of empirical research, the consensus of nonpartisan institutions, and the basic math that underpins a government budget, Bessent simply dismisses it all. Schiff calls out this move, not as a partisan attack, but as a crucial test of whether the administration is willing to prioritize truth over loyalty. The centerpiece of this exchange is the story of Tom Hman, a high-profile Trump ally who is accused of accepting $50,000 from undercover FBI agents in exchange for future government contracts if Trump returns to power. It's simple enough for anyone to understand. You have a well-known figure, a bag of cash, and a case that looks very much like corruption. But when the FBI and the DOJ under Trump chose to close the investigation without pushing it forward, that's when the real questions begin. Schiff is exposing the dangers of a system where the law is applied unevenly, where those close to power are given a free pass, and those seen as enemies are relentlessly pursued. When the public learned of the investigation, the White House press secretary immediately defended Haman, claiming he never took the money. But Schiff doesn't let it go. He goes straight to the heart of the matter and asks the one question that needs to be answered. Did Haman take the money? This is where Pam Bondi's response reveals more about the administration's priorities than anything else. She hides behind timing, claiming the incident happened before she was confirmed. But this excuse falls apart the moment you remember that her own deputies, her DOJ and her FBI director had already publicly declared the case closed. If she truly didn't know anything about it, why is she so comfortable defending the outcome so confidently? Why hasn't she, as the current Attorney General, made it her mission to find out what happened? If a top official in your administration is accused of accepting $50,000 from undercover agents saying it was before my time is not a serious answer. It's an evasion. Schiff sees this gap, and he keeps coming back to it. He doesn't do it dramatically. He doesn't grandstand. He repeats the question, slow and methodical, pressing for accountability, not just on the specifics of this case, but on a deeper issue. If the Attorney General can't or won't say whether a powerful insider took a bribe from her own agents, how can the public trust that justice is being applied fairly to everyone? Bondi's response is telling. Instead of answering the question, she turns defensive and personal. She attacks Schiff, the FBI, the committee, anyone raising questions. This is a classic tactic. When you don't want to deal with the substance of a question, attack the questioner. Schiff sees through this and calls her out in real time. He doesn't let the deflection distract from the issue at hand. This moment is a powerful reminder for viewers. Oversight isn't about personal attacks. It's about holding people with extraordinary power accountable. It's about making sure those in charge of our justice system can explain what they've done with it. The next critical moment comes when Schiff presses Bondi on transparency. If there's audio or video evidence of this alleged bribe, will she support releasing it to Congress? A simple yes is all that's needed if you're committed to the truth. Instead, Bondi passes the responsibility to Kash Patel, the FBI director. Schiff pushes back, correctly pointing out that Patel doesn't outrank her. She's the Attorney General. She's the one accountable to Congress. Saying talk to someone else isn't just dodging the question, it's dodging the job. This is where Schiff's approach really shines. He doesn't just expose the patterns of evasion, he forces the conversation back to where it belongs. The DOJ's accountability isn't optional. It's a fundamental requirement of a functioning democracy. What Schiff is exposing here isn't just one suspicious case or one high-profile bribe. He's exposing a culture where powerful allies of the president get the benefit of the doubt even when evidence suggests serious misconduct. Investigations into those allies are quietly shut down, while investigations into political enemies are pursued with vigor. When questions are raised, leaders claim ignorance instead of providing answers. And those who dare to ask tough questions are painted as partisan or disloyal. Schiff is calling out this systemic problem, and he's doing it with more than just anger. He's doing it with a deep sense of disappointment. As a former prosecutor, Schiff knows what it means for the DOJ to maintain its independence. Under both Democratic and Republican presidents, the DOJ stood as a neutral institution. But now, Schiff is watching as that credibility erodes, and he's trying to document that decline in real time. The most important takeaway for viewers is not just the specifics of this case. It's the larger issue at play. What kind of country do we want to live in? Do we want a justice system that serves everyone equally, or one where power determines who gets protected and who gets punished? The real danger is that once a Justice Department becomes someone's personal sword and shield, it's incredibly difficult to return to neutrality. That's why moments like this matter. They expose the infection while it's still spreading. They give the public the framework they need to recognize the patterns of abuse, the deflections, and the evasions. If you believe that the Justice Department should serve the law and the people, not any one president's circle of friends, then don't just watch and move on. Talk about this. Share it. Pay attention to who is demanding the truth and who is running from it. Democracies don't collapse in one moment. They erode slowly, piece by piece, when we stop insisting on accountability. This is the fight for the soul of our country, and it's happening right now.